Hi, I'm Matt Collins. I'd like to welcome you to Bob Weber Auto Mart on Douglas Avenue here in Racine, across from Douglas Park. We specialize in 1-year-old, low mileage, almost new cars. And if you'd like to stop by and see them, or see them on our website, bobweberautomart.com, we could save you between $5,000 and $10,000 on your next almost new car purchase.
I'm Michael Burke, and this is Money Talks.
Hi, welcome to Money Talks, the Journal Times online business show. I'm business reporter Michael Burke, your host, and today we are at Design Partners in downtown Racine at the corner of Main and 4th Street with Dave Foster. Dave, the co-founder of the business and executive vice president. I think you go by that title now?
Yes.
We're going to be talking about a business that everyone, literally everyone who leaves their home has seen your work, the work that you guys do, but probably never knows that your firm did the work, that it happens here in downtown Racine. Because we're talking about, continue the list, but we're talking about packaging and graphics for companies including Kraft Foods, Leinenkugel Beer, Incinerator.
Yep, Miller Coors, Bosch, Dremel, Incinerator.
Is that Red Dog beer? Is that the name of that beer?
Yes, an ice house many years ago. Yes.
So everyone who goes through a grocery store has seen your products. Everybody who goes through a Home Depot has seen your products and your work.
Which is why I'm not allowed to go shopping with my wife at the grocery store, because it takes us about an hour.
Because you're always stopping and looking at the packaging and competitors' packaging and things like that, and making sure your products are sitting the right way.
That's right. I have been known to readjust a few displays in the beverage aisle.
That's funny. So the business, you started it in 1985 right here in this building?
Yep, 1985.
Mm-hmm. And subsequently bought the building. And you started with your partner, Gary Gronke, and he's still with the firm?
Yes, he is.
And you guys had how many employees at that time?
When we started Design Partners in 85, it was just Gary and myself, and we had 2 employees.
Mm-hmm.
Someone answered the phone and 1 designer. But Gary's also a designer.
You just had 1 designer at that time?
Yes, not counting Gary. So
Not counting him, okay. But aren't you a designer too?
My background is in business and communications.
Oh, okay, all right. And now you've grown to how many people total?
29, so we're just shy of 30 people.
And you're using all 3 floors of this absolutely gorgeous, incredible building. And by the way, you guys recently, within the last year or so, finished a remodel of the first floor, and you're now using it, and it's just spectacular. How does a project start? Can you give an example of some project where you have a company and they say, we want to redesign our label, or we want to do something? Just give an example of how you get one going.
Well, typically, there's every project has a story of its own, and if a project, if a brand, and I'll say a brand because that's typically what we do, is working with our partners and our clients and helping them develop their brands and communicating their message. So if a brand goes through a brand positioning change, or if there's...
Can you explain that? What's a brand positioning change?
Well, every brand has its strategy, it has its voice, it has what it stands for, what the experiences that a consumer has with the brand. All these elements go into defining what the brand stands for.
What's an example of a brand and what it stands for? How would you put that into words?
For example, a brand like Leinenkugels might have some of its brand values might be everything is better outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Something simple.
Okay.
What's the one thing?
Okay.
It stands for.
And why would a company want to reposition or change that message?
If over time, and this isn't the case with Leinenkugels, but let's say a brand, there's other outside forces that might dictate that. It could be something that their competitors do. It could be something to do with they're looking to broaden their scope in terms of who they're speaking to and their consumers, so they might tweak their messaging. And inadvertently what happens is when something like that happens, then you have to look at all your marketing materials and how you're speaking to your audience and say, well, do we need to adjust our communication priorities? Do we need to, and in the world that we live in, it's how does this change affect things we do visually?
You mentioned a great example to me of things your competitors do with, talk about Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Yes, a good example there is for years people, when they think of Kraft macaroni and cheese and the Kraft macaroni and cheese blue box.
Very iconic.
And then very iconic. And that's what they stood for, that's how they stood out on the shelf. But over time, a lot of knockoff brands and competitive brands started just mimicking their packaging. So they no longer own blue in the aisle. So the question was, okay, now how do we react to that and still not lose sight with what we stand for and who we are?
And how did you?
Well, in that case, what Kraft did is for years they've tried to address this problem, but what they ended up doing was developing a new brand identity and creating what they call the noodlescape across the top, but still holding on to some of their primary equities, which is the blue.
You heard it here first, noodlescape.
Yeah.
And so a project starts with a wish to change something. How does it, then what happens?
Well, typically a project, you'd want to kick a project off with that with a creative brief. And a creative brief is really the key ingredient for any project, success of any project. And then within a creative brief, this document includes the business background, the business objectives, and all the design objectives, communication priorities, essentially the scope of the project.
And some kind of guidance.
Yes. And then what we want to do is when we kick a project off with the client, whether it happens here or whether it happens off-site at their location, the next steps typically involve us doing our research. Going out, which includes, whether it means going out to an off-site, going to a store, understanding the competitive set, doing a shelf audit, a category audit, basically gathering all the information that a designer would want, and then what do they do with all these consumer insights, and how do they interpret it into idea leadership and design think.
Does it also include research into past advertisements?
It could. You might want to, depending on the project.
Okay.
For example, if you're doing a project like we're currently working on with a brand where they wanted to take a look at a more retro look, something more historical. So,
if you don't name the exact brand, can you name what kind of product are you talking about?
Beer.
Okay.
So whether it's Racine-based, for example, or Hams, for example, which is another brand that we work on, what we might want to do is surround ourselves and immerse ourselves in the world of that brand, and what marketing materials they would have used in the past that we might tap into.
So
the bottom line is designers, as they design, it's all about the research and understanding. So as we design moving forward, we're meeting our objectives.
Give an example of what you consider a small project, something on the small end.
Well, the types of projects we get involved in, it's quite a pendulum swing. So anything from a new product launch to a small project which might be introducing a new flavor to an already existing portfolio of flavors.
Now, I know you've worked with Racine for many years. Do you know how long, roughly?
Since the mid-'90s, early '90s.
Okay, so you must have launched new products with them. Is there a story
Yes.
or an example with them?
Well, recently they've had two. We've been part of two. Happy to say we're part of two successes with them. One has been their recent winter seasonal Snowdrift Vanilla Porter.
What's it called?
Snowdrift Vanilla Porter.
Okay.
We launched that, but the big news was probably in the last year is Summer Shandy. We launched Summer Shandy for them, which is kind of new to the whole craft beer category, not new to the brewing industry or the brewing world, but new to North America.
Okay.
And
what is a shandy?
A shandy is essentially a beer with a mix of lemonade.
Okay.
It's kind of a combination.
Where's that come from? Do you know?
Its roots actually come from Germany, and They're shandy style or Radler style beers in Germany, and they were kind of born out of out of a sporting event. The sponsor of the sporting event was afraid they were going to run out of beer, and had to add lemonade to the beer to kind of stretch it out. And it was a biking event, and of course this was done, invented a long time ago, and of course it took off. And these Radler style beers or shandy style beers are basically a beer infused with some sort of mixer that's citrus.
So when Leinenkugel came to you and said, we want to introduce a shandy, your first thought is probably, or mine would be, well, what is that? So the average person doesn't know. So how does that direct or your approach?
Well, so then there you go. So in a creative brief, one of the objectives would be to, how do we differentiate this beer from other beers, differentiate this beer within our own portfolio, and communicate to a consumer what it is.
Mm-hmm. So how did you?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things you can do within the packaging, through the illustration style, through some of the ingredients that we might show, and through some of the intrinsic copy that speaks to what it is. So there's a learning curve there, and getting the consumer to understand what a shandy style beer is. So when we launched Shandy, it was an instant success. It took off. We put it in, typically you don't see craft beer in cans, but they would put Shandy in a can, and within its first year in a can, it was the #1 selling craft beer in a can.
Huh.
It was
For them, you mean of theirs?
In North America.
Really?
For craft beers, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you feel like you hit the bullseye then, because the results speak for themselves, right?
Well, they all hit the bullseye, the whole team. The Leinenkugel brothers, the people who brew the beer, and of course, and then it all comes down to, like anything else, there's a lot of players on a team, and then we just play the role of packaging, so brand design.
How about the winter vanilla porter?
The Snowdrift Vanilla Porter.
Yeah.
So, well...
Do you just approach that with cold winter scenes on a label, or is there...
Well, with the seasonal beer, so you want to communicate the seasonality, and you want to communicate the style of beer. So whether we do that, everything we do, every design decision we make has to support and reinforce, #1, the brand, the overall brand personality, and then 2, communicating what the beer is, what it is.
And when was that one introduced? This past
winter, yeah.
And how is it doing?
It sold out. It did great.
Wow.
It did great.
So those are examples on, those are new products. Are those considered, do you consider those major projects then, or medium size, or what?
They're major projects. But we've been working with this team for so long. It's,
the team from Leinenkugels?
The team from Leinenkugels, and we've been working on this brand for so many years as somewhat of a brand steward over the years. Where it's not as complex as, say, launching something new that's brand new to, like Velveeta Cheesy Skillets was something that was brand new.
Before we leave Leinenkugels, you mentioned something to me that was really interesting about how its core market had been the Midwest, but it's gone more national, and how that presents a challenge. Talk about that.
That's a good example of why a brand might go through a redesign. Leinenkugels, of course, its core market's going up through Chicago, Milwaukee, and then all the way up to Minnesota. It's always been known as a Midwestern beer. But in the last couple of years, they've been broadening their region, and they're considered a national brand now. So you have to look at your brand positioning and how you're communicating to your audience and to your customers, not just in the Midwest anymore. How is the Northeast or the Southeast or the West Northwest going to look at your brand positioning? Are they going to resonate the same way? So if your positioning spoke about the North Woods, well, that might not mean the same thing to somebody in the Southeast, or might not resonate with them. So you have to tweak your message, and to broaden that net, if you will. And then the question comes back and say, well, okay, now let's take a look at packaging. Let's take a look at all of our media and say, how do we adjust this?
And how did you tweak that message then from the North Woods? Did you drop North Woods?
They shifted their message from the North Woods to everything's great out, everything's better outdoors. So it became more of an engaging message, still not losing sight of who they are and what their brand values are, so that the outdoor message can apply
It's a pretty interesting, a pretty subtle shift, but I think kind of interesting.
And it's always evolving. That's something that's always evolving, because you always want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the mindset of the consumer.
A major launch would be a new product such as Velveeta cheesy skillets, right?
That is correct. More involved. I mean, this is a product that's, you think of Velveeta, you think of Velveeta cheese.
The cheese, yeah.
Right, but you don't think of anything, you don't relate a center of the plate kind of meal, dinner, around something like Velveeta cheesy skillets, to compete with a hamburger helper. So to break into his category, Velveeta thought, well, our point of difference is going to be our Velveeta cheese. So it's kind of this dry goods meal category for Velveeta was brand new. So it's more involved.
How do you get an account in the first place?
Well, it's a very competitive industry.
Or a job. I guess getting an account is one thing. Getting a particular job is another, right? Or once you get an account, you just get all the jobs that come from craft or whatever.
Well, every client's a little different. I mean, a lot of our clients, some of our larger clients work with a staple of different brand design firms like us, because they have a plethora of brands. And then there's the same with Miller Coors. And then we have some companies that we work with where we're their exclusive brand design firm. So we do all their packaging. So it's, as far as getting new projects, getting new clients it's always important to provide the world-class brand design that we do. And as people move around in this industry, the word gets out. And then you're always out there, trying to get your message out. And
so do you guys spend a lot of time just hustling for new jobs, or do they come pretty naturally?
A lot of our business growth comes from the family tree, if you will. So you work with a company, and a company might have different divisions. So a lot of growth happens within those different divisions. If you're providing a great service to one division, word gets out. Someone picks up the phone and said, "My gosh, that's really successful. That was a great job. Who's working on that with you guys?" And then the word gets out, and the next thing you know, that's the ideal way to grow a business. And we've had clients that we've done work. We have clients that we've worked with for close to 3 decades. That we have clients that we've worked with since we've been in business. So I mean, we're very proud of those relationships, and kind of goes to our whole name and design partners. Is we partner with our clients, helping them create meaningful brands for their customers.
Do you feel like there's a lot of secrecy involved in this stuff?
Oh yeah, yes. I could take a scan around the room here to make sure that you guys aren't catching anything on film that's proprietary. But yes, we have confidentiality agreements that we sign with our clients.
Sure. So they want to launch something at a certain time, and nothing's going to get out before that, I'm sure.
That's
right?
correct.
That's just the norm.
That's the norm. That's kind of standard in the industry.
Yeah. I wanted to also give you a chance to just mention that you do some pro bono work in Racine. You, again, I'm using you to mean design partners. What's some of that work?
Well, we've been in Racine since day one. So, like I said, we've been in Racine for close to 3 decades, and we're very, very proud to be a downtown business member, and so we like to give back. So we've been working with the Racine Zoo for years, and providing them with all their printed materials, and we work with.
So anytime you see like a zoo, I don't know.
Zoo debut, if you get something in the mail, or if you see a lot of print materials. So we work closely with the zoo. They're great friends of ours, and we support them in any way we can. And we do contribute a lot of work with DRC, Racine Community Foundation, a couple, Kemper Center in Kenosha, and Anderson Arts Center. So
that's nice. Yeah.
And Racine Youth Sports, I've been a partner of theirs for many years, but we do a lot of work.
Just by coincidence, I talked to Devin Sutherland, the executive director at Downtown Racine Corporation, just this morning. I mentioned to him that you were going to be on the show, and he brought that up right away. He said, you guys do every single bit of marketing material and designing their covers for their inserts and things like that. He said, almost an exact quote, he said, they have never said no to us. So that's great. Well, there's a lot more to talk about. Maybe we'll have you back on the show at some point, but because you guys are in this big world of market materials. We'll save that for another time. You've been with Dave Foster of Design Partners and myself. I'm Michael Burke, business reporter for the Journal-Times, and you're watching Money Talks. Thanks to our producer today, Scott Anderson, and please join us again.